Hello and welcome into this week's edition of the ARCA Series Rewind Show. I'm Garth Allen. This is Racing News Now. It's been a couple weeks, but we are back. ARCA Series Racing back in action this week from the Kansas Speedway, and we are here to give you all the details on this one, the Dutch Boy 150 from the Kansas Speedway. Actually, a fairly exciting race. I wasn't expecting a lot. It's Kansas. Kansas hasn't put on fantastic shows for ARCA for at least the past couple years, so I wasn't expecting a lot. And really early on, it didn't look like it was going to be that much anyway. So let's get right into it. This one's going to be a little different. Stats and such have been scarce coming out since the race. We don't have a caution report. We don't have lap leaders. I've got results. I had to do points myself, so if they're wrong, I apologize, but I'm 99% sure they are accurate. But at the time of recording, I have not gotten points yet, so I'm going to do the math myself here. I'll double check them once I actually do have official points and make sure everything is correct. So if the points graphic you see later is slightly different than what I'm saying, go by what the points graphic says, not what is coming out of my mouth, because it will be what is accurate for that. So let's talk about this one. A couple caution flags of note in this race. First one, let's talk about the racing for the lead. There were really two cars early on in this race that were really race-winning cars. The 20 of Corey Heim and the 18 of Drew Dollar. I don't think this should surprise anyone at this point that Corey Heim and the 18 car were the two fastest cars in this race. This has been the story since the beginning of the 2021 season. Corey Heim in the 20 and the 18 car. I mean, last year it was Ty Gibbs. This year you've got Drew Dollar and Sammy Smith splitting that car. It's going to be Drew Dollar at least early on this season in every race that Corey Heim is in until Sammy Smith turns 18 next month. So I believe Drew has one more race left. That's Charlotte here in a couple weeks. And then after that, it's all Sammy Smith. But for right now, it's always Drew Dollar in the 18 when Corey is in the race. So I don't think that should have been surprising to anyone that those were the two cars that really were head and shoulders above the competition in this race. Now, that's not to say the Rev Racing cars, GMS, the other Venturini cars, the 23 of Connor Mozak, that's not to say they weren't fast cars as well. The 20 and the 18 were just a tick better, though, and that was very clear early on. Corey Heim led the vast majority of the race early on. Drew Dollar did lead some laps, just wasn't quite on Corey's level most of the time. And then this happened. The two of them racing hard off of turn 4. Drew slips up a little bit, and he even admitted in his interview after this incident that he messed up, got loose under Corey Heim, slid up into Corey. They both wreck off of turn 4 into the infield. Corey got the worst end of it. Corey definitely got a lot more damage, mostly from his contact with the wall. Drew was not much better, though. Drew did try to continue after this and then ended up bringing out another caution a few laps later after getting into the wall again. Hard racing for the lead. I think, obviously, you have to lay 100% of the blame for this on Drew Dollar. Not a great move. Not a great look. And again, he even admitted after the wreck that it was his fault. He messed up, which I give Drew a lot of credit for that. A lot of guys would not admit when it was their fault for an incident like this. So I will applaud Drew in that sense that he did own up to it and admit that he made a mistake and this was his fault. I'm going to let you make a judgment on one of the other interviews that happened after this wreck, and that being with Venturini Motorsports owner Billy Venturini, who was on the pit box for Corey Heim in this race, substituting for the 20 car's normal crew chief Shannon Rush. Billy was none too happy with Drew Dollar after this incident. I'm just going to let you listen to this. You make your own judgment on what you think about what Billy says here.
I know how David Gilliland feels. Like, Drew wrecks all your shit when he's driving for you, and then he wrecks it all when he's racing against you. So I can understand why he punched him in the eye over at Bristol last year. Just typical bonehead move by Drew. He's killed a couple of my cars here, and now he's killed one and wasn't even driving for it. I mean, just look at it. Just pure lack of talent. Great kid. Does not need to be a race car driver. He's got a lot of other things he'd probably do and make a good living.
Strong words from Billy Venturini on a driver that just last year was driving one of his cars. You make the decision here down in the comments. Was Billy right? Was Billy wrong? Was Billy right and he still shouldn't have said anything? What do you think? Let me know down in the comments what you thought about Billy Venturini's comments following this accident. I'd really be interested in what you think of this. I know what I think of this, but this isn't my place to give opinions on things like this. So let me know what you think about what Billy said after this wreck. That was the big incident of note in this race. Now we get later into the race, and it became the Rev Racing show. Daniel Dye was closing later in this race, but really couldn't get there by the end of the race. He had to fight back from getting mired back in the field, and it really became a battle between Nick Sanchez and Rajah Caruth. Nick Sanchez, of course, you'll remember, is the defending winner of the previous ARCA Menard Series race at Talladega, that one that ended very controversially. You will remember that, the one that ended about 10 laps early. So Nick obviously has the momentum, and he told us after that race that this would be the first race that they had Chevy support. Clearly, that helped, as they were very fast in this race. Again, I'm not sure they had much for the 20 and the 18, but once the 20 and the 18 were out, it was definitely the 2 and the 6 were the two fastest cars in this race. Rajah Caruth was actually leading late in this race and got held up by a lap car coming off of turn 4, had to check up, lost all of his momentum. That is when Nick Sanchez comes flying in, never broke his momentum, goes around the inside. Nick Sanchez takes the lead and never looked back from that point. Nick Sanchez, 2 wins in 4 races, 2 wins in a row now in the ARCA Menard Series. A fantastic drive out of Nick Sanchez. Heartbreak, though, for Rajah Caruth. He's got one coming. I know he does. Everything we see out of Rajah Caruth week in and week out says this guy has the talent. He's got the car underneath him. He will break through for that win soon. Maybe it'll come in a couple weeks here at Charlotte. It would not surprise me. It will come, though. Mark my words, it will come. He and Nick, along with Daniel Dye, are going to have a fantastic championship battle this season. Between the 3 of them, they're going to go right down to the wire. All 3 of them are going to win a lot of races this season, and we're going to have a very exciting championship battle between these 3 Chevys this year. It is going to be fantastic. We've seen it now through 4 races. These Rev Racing drivers are the real deal, both of them, Nick Sanchez and Rajah Caruth. Both are very talented. Nick has proven that now. 3 wins, 2 in a row now at Talladega and Kansas. Rajah is just that close to a win, and it's going to happen sooner rather than later. And of course, Daniel Dye, even after everything that he went through for the past couple weeks, I'm sure you know about that. I'm not going to bring that back up. His suspension, and then that suspension getting lifted a couple days before the race here. We're not going to go into detail on that. That is in the past now. Moving forward, Daniel Dye definitely has to get refocused, and it seems like he was refocused for the most part, although he wasn't a huge factor throughout most of the day. Came on late, back to a 3rd place finish, but you really didn't see that much out of Daniel Dye most of the day. So let's take a look at your results in this one from the Dutch Boy 150, race number 4 of the 2022 ARCA Menard Series season. Of course, Nick Sanchez is your winner in this race over his teammate Rajah Caruth. 1-2 finish for Rev Racing, the first time in that team's history they have had a 1-2 finish in the ARCA Menard Series, so congratulations to them. And I don't think that's going to be the last one. As well as they've run to start this season, I think we're going to see a few more 1-2 finishes out of them going forward this season. Daniel Dye, though, in 3rd, might have something to say about that. as he continues, of course, again, to get refocused as we continue through this season. I think we're definitely going to see some more wins out of him, and he is going to be a threat to these two Rev Racing drivers in their championship hopes. Gus Dean flying the banner for Venturini Motorsports after Corey Heim's untimely end to the day. Came home in the 4th position. Really good run for Gus Dean. This kind of came together last minute. My understanding is Parker Chase was supposed to be in this race, and then he ended up having a conflict with some road racing stuff he was doing. So they stuck Gus Dean in the car, and he definitely did very well in this car. I'm pleasantly surprised with what I've seen out of Gus Dean in these Venturini cars this season. And Connor Mozak in the 23 for Brett Holmes Racing. First career top 5 for him, comes home in 5th to round out that top 5. Got to give a shout out to Will Kimmel in 6th. Last minute addition there in the 69 car. That was supposed to be Scott Melton in this race. Will Kimmel coming back. First time I think we've seen him on an oval in a little bit. Came out, looked fantastic. Very, very impressed with what I saw out of Will Kimmel. It's like he'd never left the car. I think that's better than what we would have seen out of Scott Melton in that car in this race. No disrespect meant to Scott Melton, but given where he has run more often than not, I think Will put that car higher in the finishing order than what Scott would have done. From my understanding, Will be back in the car for Charlotte in a couple of weeks. Maybe he can do one better and put it in the top 5 in Charlotte. That would be very cool to see. Always nice to see Will Kimmel here in these ARCA races. A bit of a throwback. Greg Van Alst, solid 7th place finish. Shout out to Ron Vandermeer Jr. in the 8th position. Great run for him. Career best finish in 8th. Amber Balkin, solid run in 9th. And Tony Breidinger, not so solid of a run there in 10th. 3 laps down. She and Amber kind of on their own lap there at the end of the race. The only 2 cars. 3 laps down. I'm really not impressed with what I'm seeing out of Tony so far this season. I'm probably going to get some hate for that, but she's in a Venturini car. We're 4 races into this season. I can't fathom running 3 laps down in a Venturini car, not being competitive whatsoever. I can't fathom it. At the very least, you should be on the lead lap in that car. At the very least. She didn't have any issues, didn't have any mechanical troubles, didn't have any bad pit stops, didn't get into any wrecks, had a very mundane, lackluster day. Nothing of note happened to her. She was just slow. And comes home in the 10th position. I'm all for diversity in racing. I want to see females succeed in this sport. I want to see everyone succeed in this sport. Females, minorities, whatever the case may be. If you are talented, I want to see you succeed in this sport, and you deserve to succeed in this sport. Tony Breidinger has not shown me anything to say that she deserves a car that is as quality as a Venturini Motorsports car. And I was worried that this was going to happen, as she has been in a Venturini car in the past and didn't do anything with it then either. So hopefully she can turn it around, but I haven't seen anything to this point to say that she'll be able to. Final page 11th through 19th. Drew Dollar, Corey Heim, 15th and 16th after their accident. And then the final car, Arnott Koch, the 01 car for Fast Track Racing. You'll see here that he did not start this race. There's an interesting reason for that. Before the race, that car had an accident in the garage area. It ran into a Nice Motorsports Truck Series hauler. I'm not making that up. The car ran into the hauler, had enough damage that they couldn't start the race. So that's your results from the Dutch Boy 150. Contemplating who we're going to have on for some interviews this week. We just had Nick on for Talladega last week. That's why you don't see him in this Rewind show. I figured it wasn't going to be prudent to have him on 2 races in a row after he had just won Talladega, and we just talked to him for that. So should be at least 1 interview coming up this week with drivers that were in this race. Not going to spoil who that is just yet, but keep an eye out for that. coming up here in the next couple of days. I think it will hopefully be some people that, or a person or people. I don't know if there's going to be more than one yet, but keep an eye out. It'll be at least an interview that you will enjoy, I'm sure. All right, so before we wrap up here, let's take a look at your point standings following the 4th race of the season for the ARCA Menards series. And again, as of the time of recording, as a reminder, I do not have official points yet. So, this is me doing the math the best that I can. If anything is wrong and I find that out before this goes live, I will update this. But as of the time of recording, this is what my math skills got. And I'm 99% sure it's correct, but if it's not, go by what the graphic says, not what's coming out of my mouth, because the graphic will be correct, hypothetically. So, without further ado, let's look at these point standings, and we now have a tie at the top of the points. Nick Sanchez, Raja Caruth, tied after 4 races. Nick had a bad start to the season at Daytona, had to dig out of a hole. 2 wins, though, have propelled him to the top, tied with Raja, who has not won a race yet, but has been very consistent to start the season, and that is what has put him tied for the points lead now, leaving Kansas. Daniel Dye still up there in contention, 3 points out. Again, this is going to be your championship battle this season. Your other full-timers, they're there. They're in the top 10. You've got Tony Breidinger. You've got Amber Balkin in the top 10. Greg Van Alst isn't quite there yet, but he's getting close to it. He's actually, if I remember correctly from doing my math, I believe he's tied for 11th. If I remember correctly. I'm pretty sure he's tied for 11th. But obviously not on the graphic. And then you've got Brad Smith as well, who I think was 13th or 14th, somewhere down in there. This is your championship battle, though. Nick Sanchez, Raja Caruth, Daniel Dye. Very tight to this point. I'm surprised we haven't seen a Daniel Dye win yet. I'm sure it's coming, and he's going to be a threat to contend with. Corey Heim has only run 3 races out of the 4 to start the season and is still 4th in points, 33 points back, even after finishing 16th in this race after the wreck with Drew Dollar. It shouldn't be amazing to me that Corey has done as well as he has to start the season. He's missed a whole race. He's still 4th in points. I'm actually somewhat disappointed he's not running the full season, because I think this would be a fantastic championship battle between Nick, Raja, Daniel, and Corey if Corey were to throw his hat into the ring. Now, unfortunately, since he missed Phoenix, he's not going to get the 5-race bonus after Charlotte in a couple of weeks, which would put him in a deeper hole that I'm not sure he could dig out of, but it still would be interesting to see. This is Venturini Motorsports after all. If they wanted to, they could field a car for him for every race. There might be some conflicts with the truck schedule, so that is probably why it's not going to happen, but I would really like to see it. So, Corey, Venturini Motorsports, if at all possible, make it happen. Please and thank you. Gus Dean, though, also still top 5 to start this season, and also has not run all the races, so very cool to see Gus Dean top 5 in points. It's been a while since we've been able to see Gus Dean top 5 in the ARCA points. Tony Breidinger tied with him for 5th in points, 37 points back. Amber Balkin, 9 points behind Tony Breidinger. I think that's going to be its own little battle as we go down the stretch. That's probably going to be the battle for 4th in points, depending on what Greg Van Alst can do going forward. It wouldn't surprise me to see Greg Van Alst slot his way into 4th, and this becomes a battle for 5th. We'll see how that goes as we get down the stretch of the season, because Greg Van Alst is still digging out of a hole and still clearly has not gotten into the top 10. So, be interesting to see how that goes. But this is, I think, either going to be your battle for 4th or 5th, depending on what Greg Van Alst does. Parker Chase, after missing this race, has dropped from 4th to 8th in points. And you got D.L. Wilson and Ryan Huff also in the top 10. That's your point standings following the Dutch Boy 150, and I believe that will do it for us on this ARCA Rewind show. Again, as we've said many times in this Rewind show, Charlotte coming up in a couple of weeks. Should be an interesting one. I'm not sure how that's going to go. Charlotte generally has not been a super exciting ARCA race the past few years, but this season has surprised me in some of these races that I didn't expect to be good races, and they ended up being good races. I will be interested to see. Corey Heim should be back for that race. Drew Dollar should be back for that race. Some interesting things might go down in Charlotte. Could be an interesting one to watch. So, of course, we'll have a rewind show for that one. We will not be at Charlotte. We should be at Iowa, though, here in, 3-4 weeks? Something like that. So, tentatively, as of now, depending on what travel costs are going to be, I mean, you've seen what gas prices are right now, so we'll see how that goes. But tentatively, Iowa should be the next race for us to be live at. So excited for that. Hopefully you are as well. Probably be some sort of a rewind show next weekend. I don't think we'll do one for the All-Star race, but we might have one for the truck race. Not promising it, but there might be something just to bridge the gap here between this and Charlotte. So keep an eye out for that. And like I said, should be at least one interview this week, so keep an eye out for that, and hopefully you like what you see. So, as always, we want to thank our Patreon supporter, Regional Manager William Holmes. Thank you, as always, for your support. It is greatly appreciated. If you would like to be a patron of RNN, the link is down below in the description. Patreon.com/RacingNewsNow, not required by any means. Definitely appreciated when you want to support RNN in that way. But I think that's going to do it for this one. So, as always, I'm Garth Allen for Racing News Now.